Welcome back to Camo Sports, a sports podcast where we talk about the latest news that happened across the sports world. And before we get started today, I do want to say thank you guys so much for 50 subscribers. We hit it close to about a week ago at this point, so thank you so much for that. It really means a lot that y'all are subscribing and somewhat liking what I'm doing right now. So I really appreciate it. It means the world to me. As promised, there is going to be a 50 subscriber special with a special guest. That's not going to be this week or the next week, so it's going to be posted, should be on April 25th, so be on the lookout for that, and it will be a special guest on that episode. But this episode was going to be my official predictions for the NBA playoffs, and as I was going through it, I quickly realized that it's not the week for me to do it because the Western Conference this season has been an absolute bloodbath, and the positions and the seeding has changed so much, and these Western Conference teams are so close together. Seeding is really important this season, and matchups are going to depend on everything, who I think is going to advance. So if I did it a week too early, like I was planning to do it, the seedings could change completely. For example, like the Lakers could very well lose in the first round if they get a certain matchup, but I could also see them getting to the finals in some certain matchups. That's just how this NBA season has gone so far. So if I have my dates correctly, the NBA season ends on Sunday, April the 13th, and then the play-in starts the 15th, and then the playoffs start the 19th, if I remember correctly. So I usually record on Tuesdays, and then I try to get it out by Friday, but the play-in starts on that Tuesday. So when I release my playoff predictions for next week's episode, the play-in teams may be a little wrong, and the play-in games may have already happened, so I do apologize on that one. That's just how it has to happen because of my college schedule. But if I can work around it and maybe I predict it right, so then I won't have to run into any issues or anything. But more than likely, I'll probably get it wrong, knowing my luck. But the exact teams that come out of the play-in and where they are may differ from actual real life. So I do apologize on that, but I'm going to try my best to make it as accurate as possible, and my playoff predictions will be next week. And before we do cover the actual topic that I'm going to talk about, I would feel awful if I didn't mention congrats to my favorite NFL player of all time, Julio Jones, for retiring. If your name's not Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, T.O., or Calvin Johnson at their apex and at their peak, at their best, I don't think you can name another and better receiver than Julio Jones. When he was in his prime with Atlanta, I still remember the catch that he made against the Patriots where he just snatched it out of the air, or when he completely mossed Luke Kuechly at the Panthers game, and I think he had 300 yards that game. It was absolutely insane. I'll never forget that. There's obviously probably some bias in there, but I don't think you can name 5 receivers better at their absolute best than Julio Jones. So shout out to him for retirement, and I'm very sad you didn't get that ring that you deserve, man. So since I'm not going to be giving you my playoff predictions for this episode and this week, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about the state of the league right now and how crazy it's going to get in a few days, because I don't remember an NBA season when things have been this close and things can change day to day at the very end of the season like this in a while. So the Eastern Conference is pretty much going to stay the same. The Cleveland Cavaliers have not been playing good. They've been losing some games, but they're pretty much not playing for anything at this point. So there is a possibility where the Celtics could catch the Cavs, but that's pretty much secured that they're going to clinch that spot and they're going to be the number 1 seed in my opinion. Now, the only thing that could change, I guess, if the Knicks decide to lose a bunch of games, the Pacers could pass them, but I don't see that happening. But the Pistons could pass the Bucks because Damian Lillard is out with an injury and Giannis is literally having to do everything because the Bucks roster is obviously limited. So I could see that happening, but don't think that changes much in the Eastern Conference. Now, the play-in teams have already been decided. So the main thing that I'm going to talk about this episode is how crazy the West is right now. And the fact that we can have almost 8 teams with 50 wins this season. I don't know if that's ever happened in NBA history, but that's just incredible. I mean, one day the Clippers are barely going to make the play-in. The next day they're secured in the 5 spot. You can go from hosting a playoff game to fighting for your playoff life in a matter of 3 days. I mean, the Western Conference is just stacked. As of April 8th, the only 2 teams that have clinched their spot is the Thunder and the Rockets. And the Thunder have obviously clinched the West, and they're the best team in the West by far, and everybody else is pretty much below them. But besides that, anybody can miss the playoffs and can be in the play-in at this point. And just because I said the Thunder are the favorites and all the best team in the West, that doesn't mean there's a huge gap behind them. I mean, all these teams are super close, and we're headed towards a very good NBA playoffs, hopefully, with so many of these teams just neck and neck, and it's just going to be decided who's going to play better in that particular point because they're pretty much even as far as talent and how they play pretty much. I would have the Thunder probably in the tier of their own, but it's not like a big difference. And in like the tier 2 range of the Western Conference teams, I would have the Rockets, the Lakers, the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Warriors, the Timberwolves. Probably not the Grizzlies anymore, but that is what I think 6 teams that are in that tier 2 that I could actually see winning the title. I don't know if that's ever happened before in NBA history. And I'm very intrigued to see what happens during these playoffs. The seeding is really going to come down to the remaining strength of schedule. And teams like the Lakers, for example, they play OKC, which it was an anomaly that they beat OKC last time, in my opinion, especially because they blew them out because the Lakers shot ridiculous from the three-point line. I'm sure that's not going to be sustainable. And they're going to play Dallas, and Anthony Davis is going to play LA, so I'm sure he's going to want to get his get back. And plus, Anthony Davis has played like a top 3 NBA player since he's gotten back, and he looks all world. And then they play Houston. Houston may rest their starters because I'm pretty sure they're going to keep the 2 seed, in my opinion. And they play Portland, and Portland's going to try, but I imagine the Lakers are going to rest their starters. So if the Lakers fall in the standings because they lose some of these games, and they have to play a team like the Nuggets in the first round, or if they have to play a team like the Warriors in the first round, or the Timberwolves, that's going to be a tough matchup for them. That may go 7, and for a 40-year LeBron James, could he get tired? I mean, out of shape Luka, and he's not healthy and something's wrong with him right now. I don't know. That's not the Luka we know, but that could be a 7-game series, and they could lose that series, all depending on who they play. But the big news that just happened was the Nuggets fired Mike Malone with a few days left in their season. Now, they have been dropping a lot of games, and their team has not shown effort at all, and they are just not playing defense, which part of that is because it's the end of the season, and people are just waiting for the playoffs. They think these games don't matter. That could be part of it. Another reason is the Nuggets roster is just flawed. They don't have a third creator besides Jamal Murray and Jokic, and their players either are really good on defense and suck on offense, or they're good on offense and they suck on defense. There's no in between with any other players. So their roster is just flawed. And I don't think firing your head coach with a few days left of the playoffs is just a good idea at all. I mean, the Grizzlies have done it, and you've seen they've been dropping games like crazy, so it obviously hasn't worked. And they play Sacramento, Memphis, and Houston. They play Houston on Sunday, so I'm sure that Houston will rest their players, like I said. Memphis is still playing for something, and Sacramento is still playing for something. So the Nuggets, they could lose those games. They could be in the play-in, and then they could see OKC in the first round, and that's not going to be a very good matchup in my opinion at all. Now, they do have the best player in the world, and Jamal Murray is a playoff riser, but firing your head coach with this many days left in the season, especially when he is a great NBA coach. Now, he did call out players for not watching film and for being too full of themselves, to not use cuss words like he said in the interview. But I guess the locker room was just tainted, and they just weren't listening to him anymore. And they also fired their GM, so I don't know what's going on in Denver right now. And I just don't think that was a good move, in my opinion. And then you have a team like the Timberwolves, who in the last 3 weeks have played absolutely nobody, and I think they've had the easiest schedule if you look at strength of schedule. They play Milwaukee in a few days. Actually, I think they play Milwaukee today. And then they play Memphis, who Memphis is going down. And then they play Brooklyn and Utah, who are obviously tanking. So the Timberwolves could be the 3 seed. And then you look at the Warriors. I mean, they've been crazy hot ever since they got Jimmy Butler. And beside the Houston game when Stephen Curry only had like 3 points because Thompson just locked him up. But the Warriors have been playing great basketball, and Draymond Green is the favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year because he's pushing his narrative on his podcast and all that stuff. That just don't get me started about that. But the Warriors could very well easily become the 3 seed somehow, when I thought they were going to be in the play-in. They may even miss the play-in at some points of the year because they play the Phoenix Suns, who their season's over with. They play the Spurs, their season's over. Portland, they're going to try for some reason because Chauncey Billups has them playing for some reason. Then they play the Clippers, which is going to be a big game for them, but they could be the 3 seed. So that's why I didn't do my playoff prediction, because everything is just subject to change. And depending on certain matchups, there's teams like the Lakers, the Warriors, heck, even the Rockets. I know they're young, but they still have a lot of talent. Any of these teams can come out of the West, in my opinion, and can make a run, but they could also very well lose in the first round. It's all depending on matchups. So I feel like it would have been incorrect of me to go ahead and make a playoff prediction. So that's why I'm not doing my playoff predictions like I assumed I was going to. I'm going to wait. I'm going to watch some of these teams a little bit more, get other people's opinions, all that type of stuff, so I can make a very accurate and in-depth video when I talk about my playoff predictions. So I'm sorry this is not a very long or in-depth episode. This is kind of like a filler episode just so I can get something out this week. But mainly, I couldn't do a playoff prediction because it's just too unpredictable right now. We don't know what's going to happen. So if you enjoyed this episode, please give this video a like. Please subscribe if you haven't already. The special guest and the 50 subscriber special is going to be happening in about 2 weeks. So be sure and look out for that one. My playoff predictions will be out next week, so stay in tune for that. And that should be a good episode when I go really in depth on every NBA team. And we should be closing in on a very exciting postseason. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see y'all next week when I give my player predictions, and bye.